your soul. Healing your soul. Soul freedom is found when we walk into the light rather than hiding the hurts. This is especially true with moral injury, as guilt and shame thrive in the dark. A. Heal the hurt you have. When teaching PTSD and moral injury in a group setting, we often use the analogy of two broken arms.
I have a right arm and a left arm. They're similar, but they're different. If I break my right arm, it won't help if I put a cast on the left arm, and if I break the left arm, it won't help if I immobilize the right arm. I need to treat the arm that's actually broken. For sure, I guess I could break both of them at the same time, but if I did that, I would need to treat them both, not just one or the other.
Here's the application. PTSD and moral injury work the same way. They are alike in the sense that they are both invisible injuries, but they are different. Many times people think they have PTSD when they really have moral injury. Or, as we've seen many times, they don't have PTSD, but they can sense they carry something else inside of them, some other burden. Once we begin describing moral injury, they immediately say, that's it. That's what I've been wrestling with.
Body, soul, spirit. We have multiple parts to us, each affecting all the other parts. We have a body, our physical person, a soul, our mind, our thoughts, and our emotions. This is our personality. A spirit, our conscious, right and wrong, core identity, has a spiritual and even a religious dimension. Any of these facets of us can be injured. When they hurt, you must address the type of wound that you have. For example, the body can have a physical injury, the soul could have PTSD or emotional wounds, and the spirit could suffer from moral injury or guilt and shame. Again, each part impacts the others. To reach peak performance in life, we need to train each one of them.
Even though moral injury is becoming increasingly recognized, it frequently goes undiagnosed because it does not appear in the American Psychiatric Association's most recent edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Now, that is currently DSM-5-TR. That was released in 2022 and was a slight change from DSM-5, from the 5th edition. So this had a few modifications, a few extra considerations, not enough to make it an edition 6. DSM-5-TR includes some additional specifications for prolonged grief disorder, for suicidal behaviors, for non-suicidal self-injury. And so some of those elements do factor into moral injury in some cases, but moral injury, because it's not currently listed as post-traumatic stress disorder is listed in the DSM, you can't officially be diagnosed with it. Now, that said, there are some incredible psychologists and psychiatrists who are diagnosing outside of those bounds because they see the need.
I have been diagnosed with PTSD, but as I read about moral injury and see it in writing, I relate to it more so than PTSD. Have I had traumatic events and stressors? Absolutely. Have I been morally injured by the things that I have seen, witnessed, and ultimately been a part of? You know, whether I could help, couldn't help, intervene, not intervene. It really hits home.
This is Micah Taylor from the Air National Guard speaking in our film Honoring the Code.
I think partially because the DSM-5 doesn't acknowledge moral injury as an actual diagnosis, it really impedes the ability to use it as a therapist. In my opinion, it bridges the gap. It gives us the terminology and the words that we need to provide to someone, because not everyone fits with the PTSD diagnosis. Not all of us have that traumatic injury, an event that we can pinpoint.
Let me continue reading and we'll put the pieces together. If it's not in the manual, you can't be formally diagnosed. But as we discussed way back in chapter 1, you can still be affected by something even if you're not diagnosable. Plus, our goal is not to receive a diagnosis, nor is it to avoid a diagnosis. Our goal is health. Wholeness is our primary mission. That said, since moral injury doesn't yet appear in the DSM, more and more professionals find themselves diagnosing outside the bounds of the book. And though most indicators suggest moral injury will appear in DSM-6, many people are still unaware that moral injury exists at all, and you can still be impacted by something that you can't quite explain. Now, as it pertains to veterans, the VA currently relies upon the DSM-5. Therefore, moral injury is generally not under consideration for treatment at the VA and generally goes undiagnosed or is misdiagnosed as its closest counterpart, PTSD. Therein lies the problem. The right arm is not the left arm, and the left arm is not the right arm. Misdiagnosing means hurts go untreated, and untreated hurts most often go unhealed. You must address the injury that impacts you.
Injury, hurt, damage, or loss to a person. Note, we must often associate injury with our physical body. When bodily injury occurs, we readily own the injury and seek healing. But other parts of each person can be injured too, specifically the soul and the spirit. These areas must be addressed as well. The injury most associated with the soul throughout this book is PTSD. The injury associated with the conscious and/or spirit is moral injury. You must seek to heal the kind of hurt, damage, or loss that you have. Treating something else will not heal the injury and may result in frustration and a failure to heal.
So, to be clear, moral injury is not PTSD, and PTSD is not moral injury. Even if you can experience both at the same time, they're different.
PTSD is a response to an external threat.
To something outside of you. As such, it creates a fight or flight response.
Moral injury is internal.
Moral injury manifests as feelings of overwhelming guilt and shame. It is a response to personalized threats and deeper questions. Now, here's part of the confusion as well. In the book, we have a graphic that says that some of the manifesting behaviors for PTSD and moral injury do look similar on the surface. So there's an overlap. Now, I'll put the graphic there on the screen for you so you can see that. On the left side, we have a circle labeled moral injury, and it just clearly defines moral injury is guilt and shame resulting in your conscience is violated, feelings of being unworthy or feeling less than human. It is a mental and spiritual wound. On the far right, there's another circle, PTSD, fight or flight, resulting in number 1, hypervigilance, number 2, re-experiencing symptoms, number 3, avoidance symptoms, number 4, negative feelings. We discussed all of those much earlier in the book. PTSD is mental and emotional. Now, in the middle, there's some common behaviors that pop up. Let me read these. Anger, anxiety, depression, insomnia, nightmares, self-medication, withdrawal, The two may manifest in similar behaviors in that common overlap where the two circles touch. However, PTSD and moral injury are two different issues altogether. That means the root causes, how they originate, they're different. The key to determine which one, what am I dealing with, is to evaluate whether it's coming from out there, whether it is a misperception of something in the present being interpreted in light of past experiences, or whether it's coming from in here, from the conscience. Now, to be clear, moral injury occurs because of past external events, but they become internalized based on what you believe about the ethics of them. Here's a clip where General Mukayama, I'm going to introduce him to you a little bit later in this chapter. He discusses the difference between post-traumatic stress and moral injury in our film Honoring the Code. Listen to what he relays here.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is caused by an external event over which the person has no control. Moral injury, on the other hand, is an internalized situation.
Now, PTSD sometimes requires medication in addition to other kinds of therapies. Moral injury must be addressed in a much different manner. PTSD must be addressed as being primarily a mental and emotional issue, while moral injury, though it may have an emotional component, is basically a moral or spiritual. It is a conscience-related issue. But to use the analogy from the beginning of this chapter, you must treat the arm that's broken, not the other arm. If you don't, healing never comes, regardless of how much professional care you seek for the wrong hurt, and you'll find yourself frustrated. In the film Honoring the Code, our documentary, again, focusing almost exclusively on moral injury, Dr. Brock notes that the separation of PTSD and moral injury is recent.
Only since the end of 2009 that there's been an attempt to pull PTSD and moral injury apart and distinguish them because they overlap so intensely a lot of the time.
Here's the takeaway. Going undiagnosed and or going misdiagnosed, they both create problems for the hero. Notice, both of these can create problems. If you go undiagnosed, you'll never receive the treatment. And that's the equivalent of walking around with just a broken arm. If you go misdiagnosed, the treatment will prove ineffective because you'll basically put the cast on the incorrect arm. After enduring a long season of misdiagnosing and then a misdiagnosed treatment, you'll likely find yourself even more frustrated than the original hurt created. You'll exclaim something like, treatment doesn't work, or even worse, you might even think, I'm beyond repair. Treatment doesn't work for me. If any of this resonates, just take a deep breath. Pause. I know, way easier said than done. Step back. The treatment does work when it's the right treatment. You are not beyond healing. Other people have walked through the same tension that you're feeling. And the very idea that you feel a tension inside actually demonstrates right now that you are on the correct path. B, the suicide rate is more likely related to moral injury, not PTSD. Now, you might have seen the statistics floating around that say something like 22 soldiers a day commit suicide because of post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know that that's accurate. Let me explain. For many, the path doesn't lead to restoration. They don't find healing as we're suggesting is available. For many, the path leads and ends in suicide. In fact, our opinion is that the majority of the veteran and first responder suicides that we see are the result of moral injury more so than post-traumatic stress. Now think about it logically, just think through. You can always fight against or flight from an external threat. That's post-traumatic stress. When the threat is internal, moral injury, you cannot push against or push away from the instigator. In that sense, the instigator at that point is you, your conscience, your spirit. Heroes are trained to deal with external threats so much that they see them everywhere, as we discussed in chapters 3 through 5. Heroes are not trained, however, to handle internal threats. When the threat is internal, it's personal. The issue is you. Dr. Luann Bourne speaks of this as a psychologist and a mother whose son attempted suicide many times, again from the film Honoring the Code.
I think that it's important that all of us have a conscience and all of us have a spiritual, moral compass to go by. And when someone violates that, it will hurt them psychologically and morally and spiritually. I think when moral injury occurs, they are so desperate for the pain to stop. And they're angry. They're angry at what has occurred. And the anger plus the pain and the hopelessness and helplessness at changing the events propels them into ideas of suicide.
Major General Jim Mukiyama reminds us how widespread the concern is.
We lose more veterans to suicide in 1 year than all the combat deaths since 9/11. Secondly, and this is a statistic that's not emphasized, about 69%, almost 70% of those veterans who are committing suicide are older than 50 years old. The suicide rate among veterans, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and there's been some controversy on the actual number, but they've said 22 veterans a day have committed suicide. That's almost 1 per hour. It's actually higher than that. Some veterans are taking their lives in a manner in which it's not reported as a suicide.
When recently we were writing a book about families in trauma, we researched for suicide statistics on the Department of Defense, the DoD website, to gather the actual data. Now, before sharing the numbers on suicides, let's look at the killed in action numbers for context. Now, these are the numbers according to the Department of Defense on their actual website.
More than 7,000 American service members have been killed in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq alone since 2001, and more than 16,000 have died of other causes, accidents, illness, etc., in that time.
To be clear, since 2001, over 7,000 warriors have died in combat. In the last 20 plus years, 7,000 KIA killed in action in combat. Now, with that number in mind, let's consider the suicide rate. In 2012, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, released a report on veteran suicides, which indicates a national suicide rate of 22 per day. That's approximately 8,000 veterans per year, just as the general relayed moments ago. In 2022, they released a follow-up which looked at the entire 20-year period of 2001 through 2020. Here are a few observations. The good news: The good news is that the rate is declining, but it is still way too high. The numbers varied from a low of 6,001 in 2001 to a high of 6,796 in 2018. In other words, the numbers peaked at 8,000 or 22 per day in 2012, it seems. Of note, this is only the suicides that can be verified as suicides. This does not include intentional overdoses. This does not include running cars off bridges. That's attributable to an accident. This does not include other, quote, accidental fatalities where really it's planned to have that self-inflicted outcome. So the number is likely higher than the reports suggest, even if the numbers seem to go down. During the 20-year period from 2001 to 2020, more than 5,500 in service, so while serving, have died from self-inflicted injury. That's the designation for suicide used by the Department of Defense. These 5,500 died of self-inflicted injury while serving during that 20-year period. Or to say it another way, still referring 2001 through 2020, 7,000 plus killed in action. 5,500 died of self-inflicted injuries, meaning a warrior was almost as likely to take his or her own life while serving as they were dying in combat. 6,000 plus died of self-inflicted injuries per year after discharging from the service. So using the numbers provided in the 2022 report means that throughout the period of 2001 through 2020, the average suicide rate among veterans was 16 to 18 per day. This means that well over 130,000 veterans and active service members committed suicide from 2001 through 2020. And while it is not known how many of these might be related to PTSD or moral injury, the VA found that the suicide rate is far higher among the veteran community than among the non-veteran community. Again, for context, over 7,000 men and women were killed in action during deployment from 2001 through 2020. 7,000 in 20 years, these never should be forgotten. At the same time, we should not overlook the 5,500 who died at their own hands while serving during that period, or the 130,000 plus lost through suicide, or, to use the Department of Defense term, self-inflicted injury during that same 20-year period after discharging from service. Remember, these numbers only refer to veterans, not to all of our heroes. First responders do not have a national agency such as the Department of Defense or the VA, which amasses these massive amounts of data. However, our best guess is that the rate among first responders likely reaches similar thresholds. Heroes have seen horrendous acts which they can never unsee and are rarely, if ever, able to share those experiences with others. Many heroes have had to do things that can't be undone. Giving the best of yourself in the worst of human situations over and over and over and over is not a fair trade. It changes people. C, heal the hurt. How to overcome moral injury. As we've seen, moral injury occurs when the experiences or choices a person makes, is exposed to, or is ordered to do conflicts with their personal code of conduct, their morals, or their ethics. The things that we've been taught as right and wrong. Any hero struggling with this will likely feel great guilt and shame. In the same way, fight or flight suggests we might have PTSD. Guilt and shame suggest we might be dealing with moral injury. The solution, the cure, is forgiveness. It seems like a simple answer, but the data is consistent. Psychologists, counselors, and clinicians who have studied moral injury from both secular sources and sacred backgrounds agree that overcoming moral injury requires receiving forgiveness from someone the hero believes has the moral authority to forgive. Who has such authority? Well, the answer varies from person to person, meaning it depends on each specific hero. It must be someone whom they feel has the moral fortitude to grant absolution for their perceived wrongs and failures. It might be a pastor, a priest, or a rabbi, a former coach, an officer they served under, a battle buddy or partner, a person who served with them in a unit, a squad, or a team, someone else who is perceived by them as an authority. It simply must be someone that the person believes has the authority to impart forgiveness, and it's unique to each person. It is at this point the healing process often begins. Here's how General Mukayama explains it in Honoring the Code.
People who have moral injury feel that they have done such bad things that they cannot be forgiven for it. That if people knew what they did, they would be totally rejected, that nobody can love them, and in fact that God doesn't love them. The main approach for moral injury is not a medical doctor with drugs, but rather it's the forgiveness and grace of a moral authority, a loving God, the counseling of clergy and sensitive therapists, and the fellowship of a spiritual community, offering hope and help and wrapping their arms around and helping them.
Now, for sure, you might have been looking for a more revelatory answer. For 7 steps, a weekend retreat, a pilgrimage, or something akin to doing something significant rather than receiving something significant. If you come from a faith tradition, as I do, you might have just winced a bit when reading or hearing or seeing that coaches and soldiers and officers, teachers, and anyone else can dispense forgiveness. But consider this. One day, a group of friends tore a hole in someone's roof and lowered a paralyzed man to the feet of Jesus. The size of the crowd initially kept them from entering through the front door, so desperate to get to him, they created their own entrance. When Jesus saw their faith, he told the man, Mark 2:5,
"Your sins are forgiven."
Now the Pharisees, offended at this statement, believed that only God had such authority. Jesus responded by asking them the question,
Which is easier, to say someone's sins are forgiven, or to tell the man to rise and walk?
Now, presumably, pronouncing forgiveness is easier because physically healing someone with the statement requires tangible proof. So, to demonstrate he can do both, he then performed the more difficult task. He healed the man physically as well. Now, that's not the end of the story. Fast forward about 3 years. Nearing the end of his time on earth, Jesus did something incredibly interesting. We find it in John 20. After they discovered the empty tomb, the disciples hid in the upper room, fearing they might be killed too. Jesus appeared to them behind locked doors, showing that our mental and emotional duress, even fear itself, doesn't hinder him from finding us. John tells us, he writes it in his gospel, his biography about Jesus, that he breathed the Holy Spirit upon them. Now, this was his source of supernatural empowerment. Then Jesus declared in John 20, verse 23,
"If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you withhold forgiveness from any, it is withheld."
Now, by the way, the word sin here actually means to miss the mark of perfection. We've churchified it and almost removed its real-world application to real-world concerns such as moral injury. Moral injury is a violation of the conscience. We feel like we haven't lived up to the standard of perfection. Now, clearly, Jesus expanded the power of imparting forgiveness farther and wider than the religious elite of the day dreamed possible. Not only could God in heaven forgive sins, everybody agreed on that, but his Son certainly could. That's what we see in Mark chapter 2, verse 10, with the healing and forgiving of the paralytic. And not only could that Son forgive sins, but all the king's sons and daughters can forgive sin. Yet when they don't act on the opportunity, let's get personal. When I don't act on the opportunity, when you know someone who's struggling and don't act on the opportunity, the deed goes undone. People remain disconnected. The healing process falters. People continue to struggle. In other words, God delegates the experience of forgiveness through his people. We, together become his agents of grace and mercy to other people. Now, side note, it's remarkable to me that human connection generates such healing that even non-faith practitioners suggested this is the answer. So I know that question again, what's the catch? It's found near the end of the Bible. One of the most well-known verses about moral healing is found in 1 John 1:7-9. Here it is.
But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness.
Now notice again, that word sin in this verse is generic. It means, again, to miss the mark of perfection. In the ancient world, many times they would use that word if someone was in an archery contest and they did not hit the bullseye, they didn't hit perfectly, it was considered, where it was off by an inch or a mile, it was considered a sin, to miss the mark of perfection. So here, the word, again, is generic. It could be wrongs we commit. It could be goods we omit. It could be things done against us. Certainly, it could be our fault. It might be someone else's. We could be the perpetrator. We could be the victim. It could be a tangling mess of all of it. This verse isn't about placing blame on anyone so much as it is about healing the hurt. Cleansing is the emphasis in this passage, not confession. A closer look reveals a few things. At first glance, the confession might seem like the verse holds up the need for ongoing, constant confession of each of the perceived moral injuries and ethical indiscretions in our life. But notice this. Confession here is a one-time event done to God. That moment when we accept radical, unbalanced grace. Now, this is far more nuanced in the original Greek language of Scripture than our English translations because of the verb tense that's used by John. The way he writes confess here, it's a one-time, one and done action. He writes it in what's called the perfect tense. It's one and done. At the same time, cleansing is an ongoing activity. It's something God constantly does on our behalf from that moment of the confession onward. John portrays cleansing as a repeating action in the original language. That is, we push the issue into the light once, and cleansing occurs indefinitely. Or to say it another way, if we confess once, he continues cleansing and keeps cleansing and keeps cleansing over and over and over. Now, notably, there is a single verse in the New Testament that points to ongoing, repeating confession of faults, failures, things we do, things done to us. It's found in James 5:16, the one that said, "Count it all joy." We referenced James in this book earlier. Now, here James says this in James 5:16. He encourages us,
Confess your sins to one another.
to one another that you may be healed. Notice what James just said.
That you may be healed.
James, Jesus' little brother, doesn't tell us to keep confessing to God. He tells us that God has already spoken on the matter. We're absolved. Notice, again, this verse makes no distinction as to the cause of the sin. As we said earlier, moral injury happens in so many different ways. James says to confess to one another.
That you may be healed.
And he doesn't say confess so that you'll be forgiven. He says confess
That you may be healed.
so that you will be healed. Perhaps one of the greatest roles trusted friends play in our lives is reminding us of the truth that we remain in high standing. Here's another passage that might be helpful. David, the man who lamented after his affair with Bathsheba and his subsequent murder of her husband to cover it up, later wrote the following declaration that Paul quotes in Romans 4:7-8.
Blessed are those whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never count against them.
Now, notice what David says that Paul quotes about our failures.
Number one, our past is covered.
Grace foots the bill. Grace settles the past. That's Romans 4:7.
Blessed are those whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered.
2,
Number two, our future failures aren't counted against us.
grace has already not only covered the past, it has covered everything yet to come in the future. That's Romans 4:8.
Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord will never count against them.
Again, whereas forgiveness, moral injury, is settled with God, James coaches us to continue confessing to one another. Again, it's in the context of trusted brothers and sisters, especially heroes who've walked the same path, that we hear through the sound of their voice the words we need to hear desperately. It's okay. You did the best you could. You're free. You're loved. You're accepted.
It's okay. You did the best you could.
You're loved. You're accepted.
You're free.
It's okay.
You're accepted.
You're free.
You're loved.
You did the best you could. It's okay. You did the best you could. You're free. You're loved. You're accepted.
In truth, many of the heroes we talk to don't think they can be forgiven because they have a difficult time forgiving themselves. It was never designed to work that way, though. You were never created to construct the measure of whether or not you merit forgiveness. We were designed to hear the affirmation and acceptance from others.
It's okay. You did the best you could.
It's okay.
You're loved. You're You're accepted.
You
You're
did the
free.
best you could.
It's okay.
You're free.
You're accepted.
You're
You're
loved.
free.
You're loved.
You're
You
accepted.
did the best you could. It's okay. You did the best you could. You're free. You're loved. You're accepted.
D, 2 hindrances to healing. The issue then is not whether or not forgiveness is available. That's done. It's settled, past, present, and future. The core issue is healing, and healing happens in community when others express that forgiveness to you and remind you of that grace. The barriers to hearing this declaration of forgiveness, oddly enough, though, are the 2 symptoms, the 2 dashboard lights that affirm moral injury might be present: guilt and shame. This tag team duo thrives in the dark and often keeps us there. What will people think of me if I let the skeleton out of the closet? That is the issue.
I feel like sometimes we talk about things, and sometimes we don't. I think it just depends. Like, honestly, it depends on the call. I feel like, because sometimes if it's a bad call, I don't want to really talk about it. I just want to suppress it. Some people, you have to learn to talk about it, and I hadn't really learned to talk about it.
Vulnerability. Exposing myself when I am uncertain of the outcome, particularly when I could be legitimately injured. Vulnerability implies risk. Walking down a sidewalk in our neighborhood probably doesn't make you vulnerable. Walking down the middle lane of a 3-lane highway does. Heroes make themselves vulnerable in the line of duty and while deployed. They depend upon others to have their back. Heroes must also make themselves vulnerable by trusting others with the hurts of PTSD and moral injury so they can find healing. Vulnerability is a choice. You need the right people with you when you are not serving as much as you do when you are serving.
A decade ago, I met a friend for coffee every Tuesday evening around 8:30 p.m., right after we tucked our kids in bed and had time to make a quick drive to the nearby Starbucks. It was our weekly one-to-one. One evening, he told me he needed to get something off his chest. It was something he did a long time ago, something he never told anyone, not even his wife. "What's up?" I asked. He paused. Then his eyes bounced around as if looking into the atmosphere to find the words to say. And though you'll hear the next few lines in a matter of seconds, know that it took minutes for him to stumble through each sentence of the following confession.
A few years ago,
He completely filled in the blank, telling me in a few short paragraphs the situation and the stranglehold the secret held on him since the event he was hiding first happened. I thought for a moment, and then I looked at him, is that it? Is that what you've been carrying? I honestly expected something more, a somewhat bigger reveal. I mean, what he told me wasn't a small issue, it was significant, but the shame he expressed disproportionately outweighed the guilt of what he had done, in my opinion, as the non-guilty bystander. Immediately, I learned 2 things. Number one,
the power of hidden secrets grows exponentially the longer we keep them deadbolted behind closed doors.
no matter how big they are, and no matter how much we fear sharing them, the sooner we release them, the better. Number 2,
Number 2, the size and scope of the issue is often in the eyes of the beholder.
For various reasons, it affects each of us differently. In the end, though, comparing one person's moral high ground to another person's low is a lot like comparing the summit of Everest to the depth of the abyss in the Pacific Ocean from the vantage point of the moon. It seems so different right here, but when you step away from it, I once read that the surface of the earth is proportionally to its size smoother than an 8-ball. Though the differences look radically different from here, and radically disparate, grace heals them all the same. Now, let's pause before we go farther. We can look at this and the differences in 2 ways. Sometimes you and I assume that our junk is so big it cannot be forgiven and healed. Our own stuff. And then there are those times, second of all, when we think other people's stuff is so much bigger than ours that God could forgive us, but not them. Look at what they did. And that is the soundtrack that plays during cancel culture's social media feed consistently. Culture has very little grace. Yet grace levels the playing field on it all. That evening, at the coffee shop, I told my friend, "I'm sorry you've been weighted by this. That was then. You're free from all of it. I know who you really are. God forgives you. Set it down. Don't pick it back up." He then said this.
I think I can now. It seemed bigger when it was inside me.
Again, don't get me wrong. It wasn't a trite little thing that he revealed. It's just that, let me play it in his words.
I guess I needed to let that skeleton out of the closet. It seemed scary when he was in there. Turns out, this whole time, he was just bones leaning up against that closed door, threatening to come out and pounce me.
I remember that night, I listened. I soaked in his words. At that point, I had secrets too. I realized he would probably receive my admissions and soul hurts in the same way I accepted his. As I remained quiet, my friend continued.
I just opened the door to you, afraid of what that skeleton would do to me when I did. But he didn't do anything. He just collapsed on the floor. He didn't have any strength at all.
No, I replied. It's as if I was trying to coach myself about releasing my own skeletons in the closet, about yanking them out of the closets where I'd shoved them away, out of sight, but definitely not out of mind. I told him skeletons don't have any muscle, no voice, so they can't accuse.
They can't stand up or do anything on their own.
We're afraid of the light until we actually get there, and then we find it's the safest, easiest, most life-giving place to be. Furthermore, we realize we're not alone. Everyone carries something. E, the power of connection. Earlier this year, we certified a group of leaders in the St. Louis area on our Warrior Hope curriculum. Our stance when facilitating a workshop is that we never single anyone out or reveal the details of their story to others if we know them. But if they bring it up in front of everyone, it's now fair game for us to refer to throughout the training. Now, during the morning session, as we talked about the valid reasons not to talk about your soul hurts. Now recall, we said the reasons to talk about them are greater than the reasons not to talk about them, no matter how well-founded your reasons for keeping them bottled up are. That was in chapter 2. A hero named Charlie revealed something relevant to the point.
No kidding. I talked a bit too much about suicide to my therapist. They made me a mandatory guest of the psych ward for 3 full days.
Now, for the next few moments, he shared how that 3-day vacation from society became a turning point for him. He continues.
That provided them time to adjust my meds. Now, months later, I'm completely off of them. It also created a buffer from some toxic people who just moved on without me for those 3 days. So it all turned out to be for my good.
Well, later in the day, we referred back to that story. I actually asked the question, how many of you in the room think less of Charlie because he spoke freely to the therapist and got held in the psych ward for a few days? If so, raise your hand. Now, Charlie anxiously looked around the room, anticipating that at least one person there thought he was weak. But no hands went up. After a moment, we asked this question. Does anyone in here think more of Charlie now that he shared this? And do you feel closer to him, like you can relate? Immediately, hands shot up throughout the room. A few people began clapping, others cheered. Charlie began to cry, and then smiling, he looked to me and whispered,
You got me.
Here's what happens when we walk in the light. The exact opposite of what we expect occurs. We think people will consider us weak, but they often see us as even stronger once they know about our flaws. We think people will push us away, but they come in even closer as if we now have even more in common and connect at an authentically deeper level. Charlie almost did not attend the training that day. He owns a landscaping company and finally had a beautiful day to work. It was a welcome respite from the previous few weeks of storms. And though he probably can't tell you much about what we talked about from the course material, we bet he walked away with more healing than he imagined possible. It happened not because of anything we said, but because he, unplanned, walked into the light. And the light is scary, for sure, but it's safe. You see, freedom and healing aren't found in hiding the deepest wounds of our soul. Freedom and healing are found when we live with such a degree of transparency that there's nothing more to hide. Problem, of course, is that it can seem like a long way to get there. Whereas flipping on a light switch in your house instantly pushes all the darkness away, virtually eliminating the shadows in a moment and confirming that no monsters live in the closet, under the bed, or any other tucked away place. Flipping the light on in life and revealing what's hidden in your soul feels more like a process. In the same way, many heroes deal with PTSD, which, as we've said, makes complete sense in light of what they've experienced. Many also struggle with moral injury, which also makes complete sense. It's not unusual for a hero to return from duty carrying tremendous guilt or shame over the experiences he's been involved with or even just seen. And to clarify, we believe moral injury affects more heroes than PTSD. Heroes who experience moral injury most often feel they need healing. At the same time, they wrongly believe what they saw, did, participated in, or failed to do was so bad they could not possibly be forgiven, which happens to be the path towards the much needed and desired healing. Some carry this to the point that they can never and will never forgive themselves. Furthermore, they don't feel like anyone else would forgive them if they heard their story. Their guilt or shame feels so great that they think themselves unworthy of being forgiven, even by God. This is a tremendous weight to carry. Unable to handle the load any longer, it's at this point many heroes give up completely and become part of those statistics that we referenced earlier. Speaking of his own relationship with God and the church after returning from Vietnam, Marine veteran Jim Reinhardt shares the following in our film, Honoring the Code.
It affected me highly. I stopped going to church. I have yet to return to church. I don't think I'm worthy. And I want to go back to church. But I don't think I'm worthy enough.
Now notice, he did not feel worthy. And the fact that Reinhardt struggled 40 years post-deployment with the same issue, the same amount of time the children of Israel were walking and wandering in the wilderness, just wondering if and when hope might come. It shows the depth of the problem moral injury causes, as well as the difficulty some have believing they are worthy enough to be forgiven, because you know as well as I know that Reinhardt is not the only one struggling. He excluded himself from the one place many people think he could find absolution, the church. Yet remember, you can't defeat moral injury with logic. You heal it in the light when you connect with others in that light. If this describes you or someone you know, consider this simple question. Bob, the founder and president of Crosswinds, he articulated it extremely well at the end of Honoring the Code.
I simply ask veterans who are experiencing this a simple question. If one of your battle buddies shared with you the exact same experience and said he had that, and said, "Could you forgive me, would you?" In every instance, the veteran responds, "Of course I would forgive him. He's my brother." Well, if you can forgive someone else, how much more can God forgive you? It's simple to get. It's easy. Just ask for it. It's available.
So, all of this said, as we conclude, a few things to remember. Number one, God has already forgiven you, and He's not holding future offenses against you. That's Romans 4:7-8. Number two, recognize that you are not alone. Moral injury is common and perhaps more prevalent even than PTSD. Number three, struggling with PTSD or moral injury, it doesn't show what's wrong with you, it shows what's right with you. You're human. It would be less normal to not be affected by the miles that you've traveled. And furthermore, it all makes complete sense in light of your experiences. 4, know that other heroes will accept you in the same manner you would embrace them, just as Bob just said. Number 5, remember that some heroes need to hear your voice speaking words of freedom and forgiveness to them.
It's okay. You did the best you could.
You're loved. You're accepted.
You're free.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Accept it. It's okay.
You're free.
You're
You
loved.
did the best you
You
could.
did the best you could.
You're free.
It's
You did the best you could.
okay.
You're loved.
You did the best you
You're
could.
accepted.
You're free. You're loved. You're accepted.
Now it's time to walk in freedom and bring others on the journey with you.